Okay, year 11, we'll try and build up a diagram which shows the reflection of plane waves. Now, first of all, we draw this using, I'm not going to draw it using a ruler because I haven't worked out how to do that yet, but it's really important if you're doing a question in an exam that you would do this. So you'll see a diagram often that looks something like this. So you've got these straight lines. Now these represent the waves that you saw in the ripple tank. Now it's difficult sometimes to draw these diagrams because we're trying to show movement on a static page. So each one of these blue lines is one of the ripples that you would have seen coming down the ripple tank towards you. So that, what I've drawn in red, is the wave direction. If you could see the little device with the motor on it that was making the waves, the little wooden device that would be there, I've drawn it in black. It's vibrating away and it's sending these waves down the ripple tank. So the ripple tank would be, if I drew the ripple tank in green, the whole thing would be like this, and the waves are inside the ripple tank. Okay, so each blue line there, that represents the wave you're seeing. It actually represents the crest of a wave. The distance there between the two crests, that's a little wave length, if you remember that. And the waves are coming down towards you. The plane waves, plane because they're nice and straight. You can, if you use the pipette, you can see these kind of circular waves coming out like that, but we'll not do that at GCSE. We'll stick to these plane straight waves coming down that way, down the ripple tank. Okay, so let's think a little bit about reflection then. So what happened then in reflection? If I draw the ripple tank, so that would be the ripple tank there. And the kind of dipper, wooden dipper making the vibrations is there. Now what I did for reflection was I took a little barrier and it was steel, a wee bit more obvious. It's a little aluminium, actually, little aluminium barrier I put there. And what happens is, as the waves come along to the barrier, they hit it and they are reflected. So waves are coming down like this. It gets a little bit confusing in here. But what happens is, what I'm going to draw next is an important line. What's in red is the direction the waves are traveling. There's a right angle between the crest of this blue wave and the wave direction. If I draw the wave direction, it goes up to the barrier and then it comes off like this. And what happens is the waves come in, they hit the barrier. Now they continue, but they're then traveling. They were coming in this way towards the barrier, and then they come out going that way. And that's what we're going to draw. This shows the property of wave reflection, and we'll do this diagram in a little bit more detail. So we'll draw a couple of other examples of wave reflection. I'll not bother drawing the ripple tank. You get the idea of what's happening with the ripple tank. But say I had, I'll draw it a little bit differently this time. Say that is the barrier. And the plane waves are coming in like this. There's the wave direction. They're moving that way. It would hit the barrier reflect off, and then those three waves would end up, over here, like so. Let's draw just barrier there. So waves coming in. This is very rough. You would use a ruler if you're doing this. Waves coming in like that. Remember, the wave direction is always a nice little right angle between the wave crest and blue and the wave direction, and that would reflect off like so. And then these 1, 2, 3, 4 waves would end up reflecting off over here. They keep going, they don't stop. They end up coming around, bang, hit the barrier, and end up coming away. And these are both examples of reflection. Now, how do I know what direction? How do I know what direction to show after reflection? Now we're going to bring in and do the law of reflection, and this shows you how you know what direction they're reflected in. So I'm going to do one more diagram with you, and then you'll get a go. So for this diagram, I'm going to draw the barrier where the reflection takes place. That's going to be here. And draw 1, 2, 3 waves. They're moving this way. So wave direction, which I'm showing in red, as I said, I'm repeating it quite a bit. They're always a nice right angle. So how do we know which way it's going? You can do this with a ruler. Put your ruler where the wave direction is and continue that wave direction until it hits the barrier, and then stop. And when we hit the barrier here, we're going to draw an important line called the normal line in green. Again, I really should be using a ruler for this. So that's a normal line. The normal, N for normal, N for 90 degrees. The normal line is drawn so it's at 90 degrees to the barrier. So at what point on the barrier do you draw the normal line? It's where the red direction of travel hits the barrier. What direction do you draw the normal line? It goes at 90 degrees to the barrier. Now this helps us then draw where the waves end up. Now that angle there, I, is called the angle of incidence. And it's the angle between the direction of the incident waves. So these three waves on the way in, so they're coming in towards the barrier, they are called the incident waves. And the angle between their direction of travel in red and the normal line is called the angle of incidence, I. Now the reason what I'm going to tell you now is what's called the law of reflection. The angle of reflection is equal to the angle of incidence, and this enables me to get this next bit of diagram right. Now, I'm going to judge this by eye. Hopefully when you're all back in class in September, we can do a little bit of practice with a protractor. But I need to draw my reflected direction so that the angle of reflection, R, is equal to the angle of incidence. So R is called the angle of reflection. And the law of reflection is that I is equal to R. So this red line, this shows me where the reflected waves will be. So these three waves, 1, 2, so that wave 1, 2, 3, they come in, they hit the barrier, they go off to the right, and they end up traveling this way. And again, a nice little right angle there. So they come in, they hit, and they go out again. And that is how we draw plane wave reflection. And we'll pick up from here next and do a little bit of practice on that.